I would suggest he was a Nabatean. He lived north of Petra. He lived way up in Damascus. But he was an Umayyad caliph. He was probably the greatest of the Umayyad caliphs, ruled from 685 to 705, and he was the one that created the whole Arab identity. Remember, we talked about this. And in creating the Arab identity, he first needed to create a man, a prophet, because the Nabateans, the Arabs, didn't have a prophet. The Nabateans didn't have a prophetic line. They didn't have also any revelation like the Jews and the Christians, who were their cousins. The Jews and the Christians, they had a prophetic line through Isaac. They also had revelation, the Old and the New Testament, Old for the Jews, the New for the Christians. They needed to have that kind of identity. They already now controlled that whole swath of land of Al-masih. By that time, he controlled the swath of land from Andalusia all the way over to India. That was an enormous amount of land, but they had nothing to show for it as far. He needed it. He builds the Dome of the Rock. We talked about it above, the Church of the Sepulchre, and we're going to introduce that a bit more. We're going to unpack that. So once he found he got a man, and he introduced him on that Dome of the Rock. That's where he introduced the name Muhammad. He also introduced it on coins. That's another series that we've done, is looking at the coins, where that is introduced. He is the one that introduced it. The same year, actually a year later, after he introduces it on the rock and on the protocols, he then introduces the man's name. There's his prophet. Of course, then they needed a book, because a prophet has to have a revelation. Every prophet has a revelation. Where was this revelation? And that's why the Quran starts to begin put together. And we're doing a whole series on when the Quran, the manuscripts that have been put together. In fact, we're going to be doing a great one on looking at where are these earliest manuscripts, how many are they. That's something that we're going to really tackle, because they claim that there are not just 6 manuscripts now. They're claiming more, and we're going to look at every one of them. This is exciting. But once you have the man, then you have the book, then you need to have the place. Well, the place was already there. The place was already the position of Al-masih. That was not a problem. He didn't need a place. The place was right there in Petra.
That's right.
And the narrative today, though, does not say it's in Petra at all. They put it to Mecca. And that's where Gibson really been helpful, because certainly not to begin with. When you look at all the evidence that we've looked at all the qiblas of the mosques, 20 qiblas of mosques, ancient mosques from the 7th and 8th century, the earliest mosques, in fact, all the earliest mosques, their qiblas, their direction prayer are all facing Petra. So certainly the qiblas have given that away, and that's why Gibson was so good, because he was able to go back and look at all those mosques and actually go and do the coordinates, do all the coordinates, modern coordinates. No, so you have the Qibla facing that city. Then you need all been found. Now, once you look for this, you can see. Let's look at Petra, and let's look at some things that I would like to specifically pinpoint. Let's put this here to see what we're talking about. One of the great things about Petra is that it fits the biblical account.
Right.
When you look at Hagar and you look at what's happening, and we know that Hagar is in a valley. That's very clear. We're going to one mountain and then to another. The whole tradition in the pilgrimage of going back between Safa and Marwa, are those two mountains supposedly Hagar went to when she was there with her son Ishmael. Abraham talked to her, and he turns the corner out of sight, which is exactly what we find with the cliffs in Petra. Or turning to the right.
That means something bent, basically.
And that's the sikh that you find there in Petra. But let's take a look at map of Petra. When you look at that map there on the right, you can see that if we were to expand it a bit, you can see that there is a valley there. You can see that this valley does not exist in Mecca. There is a parallel valley which does not exist in Mecca. You can see circled area in red. That's the Christian quarters. That would be where many of the aristocracy, that's the ones who actually did speak Aramaic. And it was fascinating. They are the ones, we're going to get into this later, how that they are the ones that actually give us Quranic Arabic. The Quranic Arabic that we see in the Quran, that's unique to the Quran, that everybody notices is different than the Quran that is used in Hadramaut area in the south, or the Hijaz area in the middle part of Arabia, is used in the north, and it comes out of this Nabatean.
And by the way, the most popular reading is found from the reading that is in the north also. Out of those canonized reading, the most famous one that is found most of the time in the later Quranic manuscripts comes from the north.
Okay, so let's go back to that map again and let's take a look there. When you come down and you look at the areas, I just want to get you a visualization of the map. Let's just take a look at another one here. Here is the another map that's very much the same thing, and you can see when you look at the map that there is a temple of Uzza, and there's also a temple of Dushara. So these Al-Uzza, who is Al-Uzza?
Well, it's Al-Uzza, one of the gods, or the idol gods.
Actually, she's a goddess. It's a
Or
female.
goddess. I mean, basically, that's what I mean. That was being worshipped, and it was mentioned in the Quran. Al-Lat wal-Uzza.
Alat wa Al-Uzza. Chapter 53, verse 9. Surah 53.
Story of the incident that is known as the
Satanic verses. You're right.
Yeah.
Which Nodoshi famous with his book called the Satanic Verses. So there you can see the Al-Uzza, and then if the orange, look at the orange area, that is the temple of Dushara. So I want to pinpoint these two real quickly. There's the temple of Dushara on the left and on the right. That is there. You can go see it, and it refers to Dushara. So who is this Dushara? Well, Dushara is the Nabatean god. The Nabatean god, the great god Dushara, and that's why a temple is dedicated to him, and sits right there in the middle of the valley. What's fascinating is Dushara is his formal name, but his generic name is Ilaha. Ilah,
God, just a God.
which is Allah.
Yeah.
Allah comes from Ilaha.
That's right.
So here, this Dushara is the god that we see in the Quran. Find it in the Quran.
We do. I mean, there's multiple references. And by the way, I would argue that when you say the reference right now, I'll explain why Allah could be taken out of Ilah.
Okay, well, I have it open here, and I'm going to just read this now. I'll read it to you. This is in Surah 3, Ayah 18. It says, Allah bears witness that La ilaha illa huwa.
No God but Him.
No God but
Use
Him.
Ilah, La ilaha illa huwa, meaning this Ilah is the unique one that represents Him.
So this Ilah is the name, actually, is a generic name. So the God that we see in the Quran, that's repeated in chapter 37, verse 35. That's also repeated in chapter 47, verse 19. Three places that I just looked up real quickly. I'm sorry, you looked them up real quickly, and we found them real quickly. There may be more than that, but those are three you can look at. So that's chapter 3, verse 18, chapter 37, verse 35, and chapter 47, verse 19.
Now, I would argue that because of these kind of verses, that the definite article was added, because there is no God or no Ilah but Allah, basically, that you add the definite article Al to Ilah and becomes Allah, technically speaking.
There's Ilah becomes Al.
That's my theory. Again, I don't want people to go ahead and attack me over this. And it's very obvious to me in Arabic that once you add the definite article La ilaha, meaning there is no God but Allah, meaning this is the one.
Well, if there is another God, then you have to throw out chapter 3, verse 18, because it said there is but this God. So this is Allah, because